So once upon a time, I was a young kid. I know it's hard to believe, but I worked at, my very first job was at a place called Mr. G's for Toys. And for some reason, they would randomly get in like horror VHS, and they got in, Blair Witch trading cards, which I still have. And they got in Matchbox cars with Freddy and Jason, which I still have up here. And as I said, they would get in these VHS horrors of like public domain, cheap as shit stuff. And that's actually where I got the name for Sinister Cinema, is off some of those tapes that they got. But one of the movies we got was Dementia 13. And it was like Francis Ford Coppola, the Godfather guy. So I picked it up and I watched it. That was like almost 20 years ago now. I would say like 17, 18 years ago. So that was the one and only time I'd ever watched it. And then a few weeks ago, I was, just looking for new stuff, just seeing what was coming out. And I just so happened upon this chiller film called Dementia 13, obviously. And I was like, wait, what? They're remaking this? And it comes out in like 2 weeks? How have I literally heard nothing about this at all? And I posted it in my horror group, and no one, not one person in there knew it was happening. No promotions, no nothing. So it was dropped a few days ago. I've been busy with a few different things that have been coming out, but I was like, all right, I have no memory of this original movie, so I might as well watch this first to update myself on the story and how this was. Now, this was a Roger Corman and Francis Ford Coppola collaboration where Roger Corman was working on a movie, and Francis Ford Coppola talked him into letting him use the sets, and he got like $22,000 together, and he shot in between. And a few films have been done like that. I know most famously is the Spanish version of Dracula. They use the exact same sets, and I know a lot of people prefer that version. But this is yet another one. They also worked on The Terror together in that same year, in 1963, which is, So, revisiting this movie, I mean, do I think this movie would still have its claim to fame without Francis Ford Coppola's name attached, or would it have fallen into complete obscurity? I think it would have fallen into obscurity. I don't think this is a bad movie by any means. But why don't I just get into my thoughts on the film itself? Now, I will say this. While watching this movie, I honestly had almost no clue what was going on the entire time. And I pay attention. I actually had to Google what the plot of this movie was because I just couldn't connect it myself. And it is I'm going to read it because, a woman covers up her husband's death. They're out in the rowboat and he has a heart attack. They're like, listening to the radio, and he just keels over and she dumps his body in the water. And then she goes to his family's annual, mourning basically of their daughter who had died 6 years previously. And while she's there, I guess she's trying to convince people that she's still alive. I'm not sure why. In order to get the inheritance is the idea. She doesn't want to be kept from the will because if her husband's dead, she won't get anything. But it all really just doesn't make any sense, to be honest. I was really trying to be like, wait, what? For what reason? I'm hoping in this remake that the story is better written and better told so that it's a little bit more clear cut. I think this is one of those films that if you watched like 3 or 4 times and you were like really started to piece things together, or maybe if you're just smarter than I am, you would be able to be like, oh yeah, what is he talking about? This makes perfect sense. I personally just thought that this story made no sense at all. And that's my huge negative, because the entire time I felt lost. Now, this movie definitely was inspired heavily by Psycho. I was surprised at the level of gore and kills in this movie. You have a decapitation with a head rolling. You have a chick put up like on a meat hook. You know, I was like, wow, for 1963, this is pretty hardcore. It very much felt like the inspiration for A Bay of Blood or Twitch of the Death Nerve, Mario Bava's film. There's a lot of similar things going on. It's like, you know, the story and some of the kills. So I definitely think Bava was inspired heavily by this film. And I also think Halloween was, because there's a doctor who's going around and he's trying to, you know, tell the family that there's something off about someone. And then at the end, like when the killer comes in, he shoots him with his revolver. Spoiler, spoiler. But still, I mean, this movie's from 1963. It's a public domain film. Of course, I'm going to talk about spoilers here. But I definitely think that scene was inspired, or inspired Halloween. I mean, 9 years later after this movie, and this is a low-budget, nothing movie, he made The Godfather. And as I always say, everyone starts in horror. I don't care how big you are. I don't care if you're George Clooney, Brad Pitt, you know, or Steven Spielberg, or Peter Jackson, or James Cameron, or whatever. They all start in horror. Francis Ford Coppola, now this isn't his first film. This is like his first credited film. So yeah, anyway. The thing I liked most about this movie, for sure, above anything else, was the music. I thought the music in this was awesome. Just such cool music. You don't get music like this at all anymore. This music kind of lives in that small area of time, like the mid 60s, early 70s. I love this type of music. I think it complements this film so well. I think that if this film had a more coherent plot, and that they could have told the story better, I think it would actually be a really cool and unique film. And I have to say, along with Psycho and something like Peeping Tom, this was definitely responsible for what would become the slasher genre. I've always cited that A Bay of Blood is the first true slasher film, but this one's not far off. I mean, yes, people could argue Peeping Tom or Psycho, and I do see that, but this is more of a slasher film to me. And it's a lot of that has to do with the fact that the plot is so thin. I think that if you look at the plot, like when I read it and when I read it, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of an intriguing plot. But the way that it's presented, it seems very thin. And the dialogue is interesting. And the acting's pretty good in this, though. I mean, for the very minuscule budget that they had, I think they did a great job. But as I said, the storytelling, which is ironic, coming from the Godfather director, the guy who did Godfather 1 and 2 and 3. That one's obviously not as good, but those are such well-told stories. I just am surprised that it's the same guy. But you can see the talent in the director here. Lots of cool shots. Now, definitely my favorite character in this movie is this Irish poacher. His dialogue and his accent is just over the top and hilarious to me. If you end up watching this movie, I'm actually going to post a link, because it is a public domain film that you can watch for free legally. There is a really good copy. I watched like 3 different copies to find a good one, because I looked on Amazon and their copies, weh. And then I went on YouTube and I was looking through a few of theirs, and they were like pretty iffy. And then I found this one, and it was like an HD restoration, and it looked awesome. So I'm going to post a link of that in case you want to check out this movie. Yeah, YouTube has a great copy. I wish I had the capability of taking clips from movies and doing narration over the top of them, because this movie would be a really good one to make fun of for a lot of the silly things that are within it. But the best I can do here, because I just don't have that program, and I'm not the most amazing with computers. I'm not terrible, but I'm not exactly sure how to do that. I've tried a few different things. I'm still working on it. One day I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to start doing some really fun videos of mess ups in movies that I like. If anyone knows how to do that, easily and can teach me or help me out. Let me know. But yeah, there's so many funny things in this movie, like characters talking out loud about what they're going to do. And there's a scene in this movie, like, where the doctor is basically blaming the things on this one guy because he is proficient in stonework and only he could have done that. And it is like the most cheaply shitty made tombstone. It's just like a square block with literally like kids writing hacked into the side of it, like for a name. And you're like, that proves he did it because he's good? Like, doesn't that prove he didn't do it because he knows what he's doing? And that looks awful. Of course, it's the budget thing. But on the flip side of that, they have this, you know, this basically like a mannequin doll that the guy has kept because he can't let go of the fact that he killed his sister. And at the I love the very last second of this movie when he's like, you know, it's a doll that he made look like her, and they just take something and just smash her face, and then it's credits, and it rolls over her smashed face. But that thing looked great, man. I mean, it looked like a person, and you get to watch it smash. So that was obviously like a one-time thing, like roll the cameras and don't fuck it up. But that was cool. So to see like that doll, that probably got like $21,000 in the budget. Although this is in 1963, so $22,000 is like, you know, probably $400,000 now. But, you know, maybe not that much, obviously. Maybe like $200,000. But I'm just saying, like, wow, like they probably put a good amount of the budget into that. And then they were like, a tombstone? Let my kid do it. And it sure as hell looked like it. There's a whole other bunch of things, you know, like the few dead bodies that they show in this movie are clearly alive and breathing and like moving and twitching, and their eyes are, and I'm like, am I supposed to believe that person's dead? But I mean, the final thoughts on this movie, I mean, really just any chance this movie had of being good outside of great music and some cool shots and some pretty cool kills for the time is just the storyline is nonsensical, confusing, and unfortunately the film ends up being boring because of it. I am going to watch the remake tonight, and hopefully it fixes the problems I had with this. We will see.